BattleTech. I've never had that much of an opinion on BattleTech. I played quite a few of the video games, and I did enjoy what I played, but it's never been my game or my franchise. But I am very susceptible to ethos, that is, appeals to authority. An expert can convince me of just about anything. And that's why an expert recently convinced me to buy and paint some of these chunky refrigerator-shaped robots. So who is responsible? Well, that would be Josh Derksen and folks like Bill Randall over at Catalyst Game Labs, responsible for the upcoming BattleTech ACES release. A few of these interviews might help you understand why I, as something of a hater, would be willing to take the plunge. So let's go to Josh. I'm here talking with Josh, who is someone who maybe you don't know, but I think you should, because he's made a lot of stuff in the tabletop space that are all sleeper hits. I would say that some of your games have a very strong following. The first time I heard about your design was when you were working on Heroes of the Aturi Cluster, which was a cooperative mod for X-Wing 1.0.
Ancient history these days.
I still tell those stories about a pilot who gave themselves call sign Baylor because they fled every mission.
Yep.
I'm under the impression, in fact, I now know from a source who was at Fantasy Flight that they knew about your game.
Oh, I was a playtester at the time.
If you could have been official, what would it have looked like? What would have an official product have looked like?
So the really interesting part about that is basically what happened when we did Star Trek Alliance for WizKids. There was a meeting at Origins in 2016 because I made Heroes of the Aturi Cluster in 2014, released it in 15, and I joined Lindbender Studios in 16. That's not a coincidence. They saw like, oh, this guy's making awesome stuff. He should probably be doing our graphic design. And that was really the gateway into being like, oh, well, okay, he's a developer, then he's a partial owner, and now it's also my company. So that's been my whole journey into the industry. Heroes turned out to be kind of the foot in the door moment for me. Because I've been doing all kinds of board game stuff and didn't really know what or, how I was going to do anything with it, other than this is a cool, fun hobby to do on the side. Like literally, we had a sit-down meeting with WizKids at Origins in 2016, where we pitched them 3 other designs, all of which they were like, yeah, those are pretty cool, we'll take them and look at them. And then at the end of that meeting, my business partner Tommy at Inventor was like, what if we could do co-op Star Trek Attack Wing? And they were like, what the hell are you talking about? Like that can't be done. And he goes, well, not only can it be done, but it exists already, and like you could just have this. And Sev at the time, who was director of board games at WizKids, was just like, and they don't want that? Fantasy Flight doesn't want to do anything with that? What? Okay, well, let's figure that out. And so that was really, there were 2 hurdles there. The first was like, oh, well, you did this thing that assumes you own like a whole collection of X-Wing as like a bonus PDF thing. This only makes sense from a financial perspective if we can make it a box set with stuff in the game. Like, here is a box thing I can buy that is the Heroes Experience. Okay, but the Heroes Experience is a 6-player game. So if you want to do a box set, how the heck do I make a reasonable MSRP that's not a $300 box?
Right.
And so we ended up chopping it into 3 pieces as a trilogy. We ended up making it so that you could buy a box set for every 2 players. You could just buy 3 of them and play 6 players. All the scenarios are scalable that way. Productizing Heroes. So to circle back to a question you asked earlier, what would it have looked like if we had gone the full-on route? That would have been the sort of thing I would have pushed for. Because as a designer, when you make your royalties and all of your agreements, you also are going to want a bigger MSRP to attach those to. And if you can get that MSRP on like the plastic and the cards and everything else in the box, it goes a little bit better for you to actually make some kind of living at this.
Right.
I'm very fortunate to be in the position I'm in where I've been able to do that for a few years now. I'm actually full-time board game industry.
Awesome. Related X-Wing question, what lessons did you take from a very popular Star Wars dogfighting game into Snapships, a game that at least one of my friends is addicted to, and I'm an enjoyer of?
Sure, okay. I mean, Snapships for me was the game that I always wished existed when I was like 12. And really, somebody asked me when we started that design, is Heroes coming? Is Snapships Heroes of the Aturi Cluster co-op campaign coming? And I said, yeah, but I gotta make X-Wing first. And so it was a fairly substantial process to even do that project. The 2 inventors have been at the toy line for about 5 years. I think it had been out for 1 year of that period, but they were like so far down the toy line rabbit hole that they originally wanted to make a tabletop game. And then when they met me, they were like, he can build a cool custom model using Snapships. He has done a lot of stuff with X-Wing and knows the kind of game we want to make. Oh, and he works for a company that does licensed property development. I guess he's the middle of the Venn diagram. He's hired. Let's go. And so that's how Snapships was born. tactics anyway. In terms of stuff I learned from X-Wing, very much like X-Wing Heroes especially, it was always, how do you, in any automated opponent thing, because I assume that's what we're going to talk about probably.
Maybe.
In that situation, it's always, how do you make sure the player is still playing the game and not the game is like running the player? Because like if there's too much overhead to do with any kind of automated opponent, it's just, I don't want to turn the crank, I want to just play the game. Yeah.
So moving on to Aces, which
BattleTech Aces.
here's the thing, I'm a mech appreciator. I know that Jeff and many other people in my orbit are mech appreciators. Some of them are BattleTech diehards. Now, I don't want to ask you what they always ask like actors in superhero movies about, oh, you must surely have always loved Superman, but
oh no, I didn't know anything about BattleTech.
I was about to say, so, but do you have an appreciation for, you know, anything related about it? You know, like, do you like, are you ever been a vehicle war gamer, you know, aside from the ships?
The rest of my wargaming pedigree actually goes back to heavy gear. Armored Trooper Boda, Armored Core on the PlayStation, Front Mission on the PlayStation. Like
this is my kind of mech fan.
It's all mechs all the way down, you'll discover.
That's so cool,
and soon, snap mechs.
So it sounds like you maybe had a vision of like, what would make this special, as opposed to just reskinning Hotak or something.
It was never really going to be possible to reskin Hotak for a couple of reasons. The first is that the campaign structure wasn't right. Like, Heroes was really, in the individual scenarios were designed because I was literally running it week by week at my local game store for my friends. And I was like, oh, we've done 15 of these now. These sort of tell a story, and just kind of like, you know, Lego bricks, pop, 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 stuck them together. And then you got this thing that kind of works, but it didn't really tell an overarching story. With Aces and BattleTech, the narrative campaign portion, we started with a choose your own adventure book campaign game workflow to build out the entire structure of it first, and then made the scenarios for what all the story beats were and tuned them to get there.
Right. Do you have a vision for like what makes a co-op or solo campaign, what makes that more playable in some ways, right? Compared to it.
Yeah, I got a good answer for this, and this is something that I fought Catalyst on actually. Because my background is actually as a graphic designer, it's what I went to school for. I was a graphic designer in software for years and years before being in the game industry. For me, it's always user interface, user experience first. And it ties into the thing I said earlier, which is just like, don't make the player play the game. The game should never be playing the player. The player should always be the one actually like moving things forward and not doing upkeep. And so Catalyst has always had the Chaos campaign as part of BattleTech that got this sort of PDF rule set you can download, which is like, you know, run a mercenary company, do some bookkeeping, play some
Which
scenarios.
I know for many people is like the Mechwarrior fantasy.
And the foundation of that system is very much the feel of like the Mechwarrior video games.
Yeah.
Which also never knew or played, knew about, never played prior to working on BattleTech. My BattleTech journey has been a hilarious water slide. Randall Bills, literally, came up to me because he and Tommy had been talking about this project. And he said, here's an Alpha Strike box set. You and I are going to play this on stream because we want to promote this product. Of course, it's Randall, so his dice betray him. But literally, he taught me to play Alpha Strike at PAX Unplugged, and we streamed it. You can find this on YouTube. That was my introduction to BattleTech in totality.
Wow, okay.
I knew nothing about the game. I'd never played it. I knew nothing about the universe. Fast forward to now, I'm about 50 books in. I've got 300 painted BattleTech minis. I've worked on 4 BattleTech box sets. I have development, world-building level discussions with the line developers. It's a whole thing.
I think that that's valuable. You can make it tough to make a good user experience because things that are important to maybe a big fan might not be important to a person who's trying to play the game. Can you give me any examples of maybe somewhere that Catalyst or the universe or the IP seemed like you needed to do something, but you were like, no, this is a game that to be played. I need to do this.
Oh yeah, right off the bat, it was you need to manage the money that your mercenary company owns, right? Like that there's like accounting and like repairing parts of mechs and stuff.
And part of the mech fantasy is buying ammo.
Replenishing your LRM bays and patching over the hole in your shoulder from that autocannon round, or like fixing a gyro. Okay, so part of the thing about yes, classic BattleTech is built with that granularity in the game itself already. So there's been so much campaign stuff over the years where they've got that detail. Coming in specifically to make Aces for Alpha Strike meant that we could start off streamlined. And I said, okay, but you guys already have done that rule set for Alpha Strike, right? And they go, yeah, here it is. And this whole process has been, you know, me interfacing with about a dozen different folks at Catalyst and being like, what happened to that thing? And then they just send me a PDF. And I go, okay, I'll look at that. But it was very much like I looked at what had been done already and I said, I know you tried to streamline this thing from Classic into Alpha Strike. I still don't like it. It's still too much. Ray describes it as a streamline of a streamline in some ways, and it is. because I really looked at that system and I said, all of the other games I've done, Snapships and Star Trek and Star Wars, there's almost no bookkeeping. In Star Wars, it's just you tally up what you destroyed, you get a couple of points, you use them as squad points to buy some new cards. Because you're one pilot in one ship, and it's all about you being the hero, right? And in Star Trek Alliance, it's similar, but it's not quite so attached. You have sort of buckets of points you put upgrades into it, and you can respec every game. So you're a big ship, you're a captain with resources. Snapships, we never did a co-op campaign, not yet anyway. That may also be coming, but that was also, the game is very modular and also relatively small scale. But BattleTech is like, if you look at all the fiction they've done for years and years and years, it's all about the like mercenary company. It's not just the one mech warrior, lone mech warrior. It's the dropship with the commander who's got the stable of mechs and they're going off to take a contract.
And if we were to take it from a lot of the media that inspired it, like Heavy Gear, there's always a big suite of mechanics. There's always a big group.
The Great Death Legion novels, which are like I think some of the very first BattleTech novels, they talk about how like the Legion is actually 300 people because there's a dozen mech warriors, but there's like the dropship crew, the Aztecs, the techs, the families that like travel in the dropship. Like it's a whole thing, right? And so trying to go too small with it feels like a mistake to me. And everything that you try and do in that regard is kind of abstraction. But with the way that it ended up sort of adapting from Classic and then to Alpha Strike into Aces, I really looked at it and said, well, to do that right, to have that sort of feel of like the pressure of being a mercenary commander where like getting shot costs money, you really need to have a system that like doesn't take as long as the game plays. So if
people want to play a mech upkeep game,
the Harebrained Schemes BattleTech is a good example.
That's true.
And so are all the Mechwarrior games.
But it sounds like you're saying it's important that, although that is a part of the fantasy, let's say, you are not trying to make a game that is a simulation of it. You're trying to make a game where you're playing on the field.
If you like to play Alpha Strike, I would rather you spend your time in Aces playing Alpha Strike and not doing all this other bookkeeping and distraction. So very much the way Heroes is like, read your briefing, pick your force, do the mission, get some points, make a new choice. That loop is still very much in Aces. The difference is here, like I did want to get as much as I could from the simulation part. So there is a post-game, literally it looks like a tax form, but it's much, much simpler than that. It's literally take line 1, fill in this, credits earned. Line 2, bonus objectives complete. Line 3, replenish ammo on your units. It's just a flat cost per mech as long as it doesn't have all lasers. Very simplified. Tally them all up in a line. Add lines 2 and 16. Get the output. And you put
I'll
that
be
in
honest.
a
I'm not sure if
done.
I'm not sure. I'll wait for it. I believe you when you say user experience is tantamount. Even if it looks like a 1040, I can live with it.
Compare that to what already exists in these other campaign systems.
Yeah.
There's 15 pages of, well, between missions you do these things. I just said no. It's fill out a form.
What
form crunches, you get the result to your next mission.
When you are on the field, what decisions does a player have to make to like move the enemies around?
I mean, so the automated opponent is a very different structure from the other games because Alpha Strike is a full-on miniatures game with a tape measure. I mean, you can play it with hexes, but either way, the movement is open. You're paying for terrain, you can go wherever you want. In Alpha Strike, you don't even pay for facing changes. You just go there and stand which way you want to face. And so all of the other automated opponents I had ever written were like very bespoke. They figured out the geometry of the game. They understood movement distances and rulers. And they would do that in a way that players weren't prepared for because the AI understands the geometry of the game. You can't do that in a war game with freeform movement. And so we had to take a totally different approach to just look at it from like, well, it's actually a ranked list of priorities. You got to figure out who he's going to fight, whether he's going to do any of these behaviors, and then who he's going to target. And then once he's got that in mind, all the places he can shoot him, how do we narrow down like where he cares about being on the field? The rulebook describes it this way, and I think this is the best way to explain it. It's just, it doesn't tell you exactly what to do. It tells you what the model wants to do. And it is a series of filters that you apply until you filter down to exactly one place to be.
Okay, cool.
And like 95% of the time, you get one specific result that you can usually figure out pretty quickly by looking at the table.
Cool, okay.
It's like, oh, he wants to see only as few enemies as possible. Cool, he wants to be cover from as many enemies as possible. He wants to be in a woods line. Look at the table and go, oh, well, you can see that one.
And I'm guessing you have different personalities for different types,
There's 2 layers of it. Mechs themselves, Alpha Strike cards have always, little stack cards that come in Alpha Strike, have always had sort of the broad military roles for the mechs. There's a brawler, there's a sniper, there's a missile boat support unit, there's a a striker, which is functionally an assassin. So like those roles were already in their DNA, and they've already got product that refers to them in that way and cards that refer to them that way. So we chose that as the hook. I made a deck of cards for each of those roles. So like, okay, well the scout obviously has different things in mind. It's not going to try and get in short range and fight. It's going to kite the edges and make sure it has a clear line of sight so it can spot for your artillery and so on. But each of those roles plays differently. And then the meta layer to that is we started figuring out that it was actually, we started finding that you could sort of counterplay the AI. We found where it was kind of dumb, like, oh, it's exploitable here. And then we realized that if you add another layer of a force commander in fiction, there's a second AI deck that has global priorities.
Oh, cool.
And they tie, the cards occasionally go, I want to do these things, but I want to key off a blue priority from my commander.
Cool,
The commander has a couple of ranked lists that can say, like, even though you're a super brawler and normally you fight the heaviest thing on the field and pummel it, right now you got to kill that light back over there. So the commander is doing sort of that broad turn-to-turn overarching gameplay and has a special ability as well that can change how the card. So like that layer. And then the commander also at the end of every round, there's a list on the back. What happened this turn as a list, and you work through it. And if you meet any of those conditions, you change that commander card for a different one from the stack, so he reacts to what you...
I can already envision this, and that sounds really cool.
I have a sensor at the top of the water slide, and I just have to give you a little push. You're also a Gundam fan.
Obviously.
What
decisions are you going to make as a player in the out-of-combat stuff?
So between scenarios, and one of the things that we realized early on in the project, I didn't really have this appreciation of BattleTech. Like, I knew that they published fiction.
Right.
But what I didn't really understand about it as a property is that, like, no, actually the fiction is first, and all the source books kind of infill after that. They actually plan their source books, then they write kind of a spine trilogy for whatever era, and then they branch off and tell other stories. But like, the tabletop game is almost a satellite to that. Like, the fiction really is what drives the universe and sort of what exists in the universe.
This is explaining a lot for me. That's really cool.
It's making BattleTech kind of make sense.
It does,
and fit together. Learning that about the property and how much of an emphasis they put on fiction, I said, well, actually, you know, we really should take some of the story-based mechanics that we developed for some of our older Limbander games, like Gascony's Legacy and Terminator Genesis, and bring those back into this idea. So the other part that's really different about ACES is we've got this waypoint system. During a single scenario, you'll read a mission briefing in character. Whoever your contact is, your liaison, will tell you what's going on, what you're expected to do. Here's your objective. Here's how much player force you can commit to this mission. Here are your actual scenario objectives. Do this to win. This is what's worth. All that stuff. There are tokens that get seeded out in the map sometimes, or on the turn track, or on units. They're called waypoints. And they have different special rules for how they're triggered. But when you trigger one, it's suddenly a choose your own adventure book lookup. You'll pull out the back half of the campaign book, flip to it, and go, well, this is scenario 4, waypoint A, there's a paragraph for that. Something cool will happen. And there are keywords sometimes that track decisions across scenarios or decisions about how things resolve. It's almost like playing a video game where you get these little cutscene moments, and they can change how those Alpha Strike scenarios play, and or even change the objectives or the scenario. There are some that have very shocking twists in the middle. We're like, oh crap, the scenario is not what we thought. Are we still going to do the scenario, or are we going to change sides and fight the encore? Like, that kind of stuff.
It helps to understand BattleTech as a property. It sounds like I might be at the start of a journey similar to yours.
We'll see.
But this is really exciting.
I would describe it as a water slide.
This is very exciting. Are there any other co-op systems that you appreciate?
So, one of the things that I find, I mean, I play a lot of stuff, not just miniatures war games. That's my real passion.
Of course.
I play a lot of board games as well. I have a hard time sometimes where I'm just like, this is a project I could have made. Why didn't they do that? I get a lot of that. I like the game, but I'll be like, nah, I know how to do this.
I could clean this.
Very much so. So I get that a lot, and this is part of why I don't actually play a lot of other dungeon crawler or big narrative games, because I have issues with them, I tend to find. But like, largely, I find that, like, I've been a really big fan of how they have done Rangers of Shadow Deep. But more specifically, I really like 5 Parsecs from Home. It's just literally just, you know, roll and look up tables to generate everything.
Sorensen, I think, is a really nice designer. He's made some games I like WeaselTech, the 5 Blank series. He's got a lot of good designs.
I also look at a lot of automated opponents for other games. If you're familiar with the board game Heat,
that
is actually one of the best automated opponents I've ever seen in a board game.
Interesting.
Because literally it is a deck of cards, and there's 3 rules you apply, and you're done. It honors the rule that I try and aspire to, like, don't make the game play the player. Heat, I will play, we'll do a 2-player game, and we'll add 4 bots, and it won't feel like any extra overhead. That is exactly what I want.
I love that. This has been a great chat. I mean it. I could ask questions for hours, and
Oh,
maybe I will another time.
And I certainly could talk for hours.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, Josh.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. And thanks again. I'm currently standing outside Twin Peaks, Washington, aka North Bend, Washington. And I don't really have a great intro that's relevant for this video. But I am sponsored by Into the AM, and I want to say that their shirts are pretty good. They sent me several free shirts. They're more comfortable than my other cheaper shirts. I don't care that much if you purchase from them. They already sent me the shirts. But if you do, I've got a promo code, and it's linked below. And you could also purchase some shirts that are above average. Do what you want. You're an adult. Anyway, let's continue.
I also spoke with Randall over at Catalyst Game Labs. The support and the exciting new stuff coming out for BattleTech was really what pushed me over the edge.
We're just continuing to push that boundary of how much articulation we can add in it. We also had the what we're calling it's an anniversary edition for our Technical Readout 3025, where we went through and basically Ray Arasti, the line developer, came to me with this idea of, in 1,000 years in the future of BattleTech, that's when Technical Readout 3025 published. And so we just had to run with that. So we created this where we returned all of the text to the very first printing, and then did all of our new art, took everything that we've done through all of our plastics. We also went through and redesigned all of the aerospace fighters. So for those that, been waiting for aerospace redesigns, we've got those in there as well. There's lambs and basically everything that's in there. And then our big release really was BattleTech Gothic, which is our first official alternate history setting, where basically during the Star League type of biotechnology is kind of created, and then as the Star League falls and the Succession Wars happens, that kind of escapes, starts infecting humanity. They weaponize it, and then you have these giant monstrosities that we call abominations, and the battle mechs then change their aesthetics and the way in which they work to fight that. And so it's, if you're going to look at it and see that aesthetic and fall in love with it, that's awesome, great. If you don't, that's fine. We're only doing 1 or 2 items for it, and then we're off on to the next continuum, as we're calling it. And the next one will be rockets and ray guns, kind of a homage to the 1950s golden age of science fiction. We've already got concept art running for that and so on. So those are kind of our biggest excitement we had here in the show. Obviously, new novels are always coming out, new fictions, we push that side of it. And then the biggest one, the most anticipated one, outside of BattleTech Gothic, that didn't make the show, will be out in the fall, is BattleTech Aces, which pretty sure you already have a great expose with Josh. Really, I'm incredibly excited for that. Tommy Gofton and I worked really hard to make that happen and to pull Catalyst and Lynn Vander together to forge this team to create something that'll give you solo play or co-op play for Alpha Strike, narrative campaign play. As usual, we try and cram as much value in our box sets as possible. And you have weeks and weeks, if not months and months, of campaign play in that first Scouring Sandbox. And then there'll eventually be 3 other boxes that will take you in campaigns around the Inner Sphere and the New Hill Planet era.
Awesome. So much cool stuff coming. Thanks a lot, Randall. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This is the end of the video. So in addition to my main games, I would like to do a video on BattleTech at some point, especially sort of sharing my newcomer's perspective. I don't know when that will be, so until next time, thank you for watching.